Hi, my name's Zani, and I'm here with my partner Tiger. Together, we'll be talking about Until Dawn, a title created by Supermassive Games and published by Sony. Until Dawn's prototype was first shown in Gamescom 2012 as a PS3 game. It was initially designed to show off the capabilities of the PlayStation Move Motion controller, but when that flopped, the game was redeveloped. It was completely rebuilt from the ground up, changing from a first-person perspective to a third-person perspective, and switched platforms to the PS4. Sony seemingly had little faith in the project and released it in late August 2015 with very little marketing. Despite this, the game sold better than expected and was received warmly by critics and fans for providing a unique experience in cinematic storytelling. Until Dawn is an adventure title designed to be a game of skill with 3D continuous spaces. Its main audiences are players that wish to get immersed in its narrative. The main story is set in the western mountains of Canada and has you controlling several young protagonists: Sam, Chris, Jessica, Emily, Matt, Mike, Ashley, and Josh, with their character traits conveniently provided by the game itself. The main conflict of the story is person versus person. The teenagers are stranded and are being hunted by the antagonistic psychopath, and they must survive until help arrives. How long do they have to survive for? You guessed it, until dawn. The story is an embedded narrative that offers multiple choices, promising that your decisions will create a branching storyline. All of this seems typical of a standard narrative adventure game, so what exactly did Until Dawn do to truly stand out? In this video, we'll be analyzing the game's design qualities to uncover how it succeeds, how it stumbles, and how it forms a connection with the player.
Until Dawn's unique features are that it is an exclusive game which requires the player to play on the PS4 console. The hardware used to control this game is the DualShock controller, which has the motion sensor to detect movements and a touchpad, making this the perfect controller to play the game with. It is not too hard like the point-and-click games and not too easy like the walking simulations. Some of the game's advantages include having an illusion of impactful choices. All characters can live or die in a matter of one decision that can't be undone. Unlike other games where decisions can be undone by loading old save files, this is a butterfly effect which one decision can affect future outcomes, resulting in the game having meaningful play. As the game progresses, there are also clues that players can find to solve mysteries that are unknown to the player yet. These are the game objects which static in its location and the dynamic in the description. The flow state of the game isn't ruined by high difficulty spikes that impedes progress. The don't move segments and quick time events are still challenging but rewarding as the game tests out the skills of how fast the reaction of the gamer has. But the game also doesn't stop and forces you to restart if you mess up these segments. The aesthetics and design qualities of the game comes from the narrative aspects. By allowing the player to play as the 8-player characters, the gameplay lets them become more immersed as the game solves one big problem with narrative games by removing the failstate entirely. Every action you do makes it meaningful because it can mean the difference between a life and death for the characters. The cinematic aspect of the game is very unique. Instead of hiring an art director like other games, they hired a production designer who worked on real film sets. These allowed them to set up forced angles in order to emulate the cinematic feel of the movie. This setup also is the best for certain jump scares to happen, just like what you find in movies. The characters' facial animation were captured by professional actors, with mocaps. Body animation were captured separately and combined with the facial animations to create the most realistic look for characters. Involves mostly physical skills in the form of QTE, known as the QuickTime event, most of them being the physical skills involving the sudden buttons that the players has to press, and analog stick the players has to hold still. And totems in the game foresees the results of certain choices, reducing frustrations for players and act more as a hint and a clue for the player. The core gameplay attempts to elevate this frustration by adding in collectible totems that show you visions of the future. For example, one totem will discourage you from throwing the snowball at the bird, but if you ignore it, you'll get impaled by an icicle. So many of these aspects of the game is unique, but it is what makes the game so special and popular. But what are some of the critics of the game?
The game isn't perfect, however, and does suffer from its cinematic inspirations. While it does a good job mimicking the feel of a slasher film, it also copies all the problems of that particular horror subgenre. Most characters don't really evolve beyond their initial character traits and end up as flat stereotypes. The story itself, while entertaining, is very generic. The game features cliches like a mass killer, abandoned hospitals, poor phone reception, and much more. The tone also becomes inconsistent because the story goes off the rails in the second half of the game. To recreate the cinematic feel of movies, Until Dawn uses fixed camera perspectives and slow movement speeds, making the characters feel cumbersome to control. This makes it especially annoying when you want to explore the environment for its collectibles, especially for an adventure game. The game also doesn't do a good job of maintaining meaningful play. Firstly, some actions aren't discernible because it's unclear what their immediate consequences are. In my playthrough, I was being chased by the psychopath and was given a choice to either run or hide during my escape. I chose to keep running when prompted, but I was captured because I didn't choose to hide at the very last second. I felt very frustrated at that moment because there was no possible way for me to know what the right choice was on my first playthrough. Another problem with Until Dawn is that it has very little player agency because it only maintains the illusion of having integrated actions. None of the player's choices actually have meaningful consequences on the story. While it's true that every playable characters can die, it means that the story has to proceed with the assumption that certain characters could be alive or dead. The game ends up with about 3 important characters with plot armor, while the rest of the cast are disposable and barely affects the plot. Not everybody's playthrough will be the same, but the changes only involve minor visual details, additional dialogue, or unimportant side stories. The main narrative doesn't really have branching paths. It's more like a straight line with some minor side quests, and I was very disappointed to discover this when I played the game a second time.
Are you kidding me? No
Asking them
handle!
to actively participate in what basically is a horror film. A common problem with slasher films occurs when characters commit actions that lack common sense. When they do stupid things like split up or leave weapons behind, the viewers are left disconnected from the characters because these are actions that they wouldn't do in the same situation. However, by letting the players control the characters directly in a game, the disconnection goes away. In my playthrough, I was exploring a sanatorium when I came across this waving hand. If the character chose to examine it, they would get their hand caught inside of a bear trap. However, I ignored the hand because I assumed that it was a trap. I felt more connected to the characters this way because we shared the same mindset. Every stupid action that they commit would simply be my own fault. Additionally, the game is unique in that instead of giving you control of only 1 or 2 characters like in other narrative games, it allows you to control 8. The player is essentially connected to the game as a director, allowing them to make the characters act out what kind of horror movie they want. You can create a typical horror movie by making everyone do stupid things and killing them off in gruesome ways. Or you can subvert all the tropes of slasher films by allowing the characters to make smart choices and save them all. Or you can simply kill off characters that you don't like and keep the ones that you like alive. The choice is yours.
The connections part of the game is through the psychiatrist asked, where it connects to the player by attempting to psychologically profile you, the player, by asking you certain questions. It is a fit into the persona of the character through the list of questions the psychiatrist asks the player at the end of the chapter. It aims to tailor to the player itself into what its gameplay preferences are, such that what the player are most scared of. If used the most comfortable and uncomfortable and the list of characters it would appear in the gameplay. If it is mentioned and analyzed by the psychiatrist, for example, if you tell him that you are most scared of clowns, clown masks will start popping up in the game. They truly feel connected as it targets the player throughout the whole gameplay. It also goes by the playstyle of the character, whether the player is a safe playing player or someone who likes to go on searching for many clues. To me, as a player, when I start playing, I felt like it was that this psychiatrist was communicating directly to me as a player. It seems like he's hinting me at what is going to happen in the next chapter of the game, and it gives the player an anticipation as well as being more aware. This creation of mystery by the psychiatrist is what makes the connection into the persona of the player, and it tests out how the player would approach each chapter and predict certain decisions made. In conclusion, Until Dawn isn't perfect, but it still turned out well considering its troubled development way back in the PS3 title. It didn't truly provide a branching narrative, but certainly did offer much improvements to truly push narrative games to a new level, and it's definitely a game worth playing. Thank you.